is that we maintain a certain amount.
Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call the March meeting of the Deschutes Public Library District Board to order. Our first order of business is our minutes. Did people have a chance to review those? Were there any additions or corrections?
Second. Let's see. No. Let's see. Can anybody else on the line hear? All right, ask that.
I can hear.
I can
Okay.
hear. I can hear now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, buddy.
I am so sorry that I messed this up. I thought the whole thing was by Zoom.
That's all right. You're experimenting. You're the trailblazer for us.
Oh, great.
Okay. We're just starting, and I asked if there were any additions or corrections to the minutes. If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve them. And Todd has listed some sample motions as we requested him to do on the revised agenda that should be in front of you
With the red print.
with the red print.
I move to approve the February 9th, 2022 minutes as written.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Hi.
Okay, minutes are approved. And I have to say that we did rearrange this agenda a little bit to make there's Ray, welcome. To make the flow of the meeting a little bit more logical. So the same items are there with one exception, which we'll talk about when we get there. But we've moved some of the executive sessions and made it a little bit more logical. So only one part is missing, and we will get the reason for that. So, and now we are at the public comment section of the meeting. Are there any members of the public that would like to talk to the board? Testimony is limited to 3 minutes per citizen. Okay.
I do not see
I don't
anybody
see-
volunteer.
Okay, seeing no people, we will close the public comment section. And for our governance process policies, we're going to start with a review of the designs for the Lapine and Sisters Library.
Okay, so Ruth, I saw you there, and I'm having trouble seeing who's on. So whoever from Maryland.
Yeah,
Hill.
yeah. Derek and I are here, and Libby's here for technical support. So yeah, Derek, do you want to kick it off, and I can just chime in as we go along?
Yeah, we can do that. So we're going to go ahead and start with Lapine. Libby, one more. We're going to start with the site plan. There's not a lot that's going on here at the site plan, other than we're going to refresh the landscaping along Huntington Road and First Street. Just to, we're going to get rid of, there's a rock river, dry river in there. We're going to get rid of that. We're going to fill in some of the bare planting areas and just make it look a little fresher as you approach from either Huntington or First Street. The only other spot that we have is out by the ADA parking stalls. There's a little chunk of concrete that we're adding to provide a walk-up for the newly relocated book drop that we'll see in the next plan. With that, next slide. So this is where it gets a little more exciting. I'm going to go ahead and start at the front entrance. And one of the things that we wanted to really do here is walking into both Sisters and La Pine. It's very confined, and you feel like you're just trapped. So we really wanted to open up those angled walls. You'll see that those are now gone. Where it says entry on the plan, let me request control here so I can actually point with my screen. All right, so where it says entry here, the idea is that that's going to be a roll-up security. It's going to, or security grill, similar to what you would see at like a mall when the shops are closed. During the day, that thing's going to be wide open. You're going to feel, you're not even going to see it. You're going to walk in, you're going to be looking directly into this great new space up here that will have new furnishings, new fixtures, new paint job. It's going to be fresh, bright, clean. That's probably the first thing you're going to notice. Backing up to the entry, we are adding an entry vestibule. That's something that's required by the energy code. We'll also keep those cold drafts from blowing so deep into the space and feel just a little bit better.
Eric, can you zoom in on the areas you're talking about? Because it's kind of hard for us to see.
Oh. Yeah, if you can do that, Libby, I don't.
Sorry, trying to figure that out. Okay, bear with me.
Todd, you're asking us to go off script now.
Well, we could adjust it here if that doesn't work.
Sorry, zoomed in, that's all.
There we go.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Thank
Not
you.
too bad, that's better.
All right. So here at the entry, is that better?
Mhm.
Yes.
So here at the,
Just do a brief overview of what you just said.
okay, so here at the entry, we're adding the new vestibule wall with the RFID book readers. Make sure nobody walks off with the book. We're reconfiguring the entrance to the women's restroom a little bit to grab some storage space and relocate the janitor's closet. As we get down to the south end, you'll see why we're going to be doing that. Back across to the other side of the entry, we've set the multi-purpose room up for after-hours events. You can either come through the entry or you can come through the exterior door. Either way, you'll have access to both the men's and women's restrooms because the entry or this security grill that I talked about at the beginning would be down. So it becomes a very secure space. You'll have access to the men's and women's restrooms for after-hours use. In the multi-purpose room, we're going to have we're relocating the kitchenette bar. It's going to be a small countertop with a sink. And probably the biggest change is here, we are taking out this wall between where the existing storage closets are, and we're going to open that up with glass, operable wall that can be opened up. You'll be able to see what's happening in this multi-purpose room from the children's area. It's going to feel a lot bigger and not so confined like it feels in there now. The spaces are going to be much more enjoyable to be in, honestly, and much more active, so that you can see and it feels like one big building instead of a bunch of separate broken up rooms. Let's move to the right, Libby. The staff areas. There we go. Okay. You will quickly notice that this back area, staff area, looks significantly different than it does today. We're opening it up we've relocated the exterior book drop to make it more usable to the staff. Currently, it's down by the break room down here at the south end. So we're relocating it up towards the front door where people expect to find it. We're also adding an interior book drop that when you come back to the library, you walk in, you can drop off your books as you go to look for more items. Moved the supervisor's office, gave them a private office as required by our programming sessions. We took the data hub that is currently a very large, oversized room. We've shrunk it down and right-sized it to reclaim some of that space back for the staff to use. And we're adding a break room to give the staff a bit of a respite during the day for their breaks. We're also adding a staff restroom so that they've got a little bit of personal space and don't have to interact with the public while they're using the restroom. Anything you want to add there, Ruth?
No, I think that's great. I mean, all this is going to help the staff do, even more little space they have and provide better service for everyone using this branch.
Let's scroll up, Libby. So the plan is to redo the fixturing, the bookshelves, computer stations. That you'll see those shown as a pod of 3. It's our understanding that Lapine, because of the limited internet access that's available in the community, that internet access is a big deal for this branch, and it's used quite heavily by the citizens of the area. So we're providing workstations there so that they can come in, check their email, do what they need to do, access the internet. Over here by this mechanical area, which is outside, we're adding a new electric fireplace just to provide a seating area, a place for people to sit down, read a book, and work. The actual location of that is still yet to be determined, but we're still playing with that a bit. Back across the room, we have the teen area, similar to where it's shown today, or it currently resides in the building. We're just going to freshen it up, open it up a little bit, and give them a space that works great for them. And then we're freshening up the existing meeting room, and we're proposing putting glass around that as well. So there's going to be lots of spaces where you can get together, meet, have small public meetings or tutoring or whatever may be required, but yet it's not closed off. You're not in rooms, so supervision stays quite visible for staff to monitor what's going on. And people will be able to see that those rooms are being used as well, which is always a good thing that when rooms are activated. I think that's about it for Sun River, unless you have something you want, or Sun River for Lapine, unless you want to add anything else, Ruth.
Derek, can we go over to the other side of the building and just point out that we're also have this, he probably mentioned it, but the tutor room also will be added right here.
Yeah, so we'll have a small tutor room here that will basically be like a 2-person, a couple of teams or a couple of individuals. You could step in there, make a private phone call, or study. 2 people could work on a group project in a quieter session. Or quieter space as well. And then also the children's area, it is going to be completely refixtured and freshened up and brightened up as well.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. Okay.
happens on the board meeting.
All right. Any questions on Lapine?
Yes, Ann.
Derek, I have a question. This is Ann Ness. What is the capacity, person-wise, for the multi-person room? What are we looking at there?
I believe it's about 35. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Not what it is now.
Looks like we
Actually,
can,
it's shown as 49. 49.
Yeah.
So it's a little. And if you crammed people in there, you could actually probably get a little bit more than that as well. We have 2 exits, so you could increase that number if needed.
It's a little bigger than it currently is because we've removed the storage area back here and added a new storage area outside of the current room. So it's
That is-
like,
Could that operable wall be opened and seating extended out into the children's area? Will those displays be mobile?
yeah, absolutely. And it feels like, you know, we didn't really talk about this, but when there isn't an event going, then those doors can open and it can just be an extension of the library. So we're really trying to make sure all of the library space gets used, you know, every hour that you're open. You know, just to really make sure we have all the capacity for all the users.
I have a question. On the multi-purpose room, there's a glass wall there, but is there a drop screen for showing, you know, slides or presentations? Would that still be there?
Absolutely. So what you're not seeing is in front of the storage closet here, those are sliding barn door style access. But in front of those, you would have a screen that would drop down from the ceiling. And there could potentially also be a large screen LED in that room as well.
Okay.
Still working out some of the details.
Yeah, what we're hoping to do, and this is still, you know, in its kind of beginning stages, Bunny, is to try to bring some consistency to all the meeting rooms in the district so that when you go, you know, to one meeting room or another, you're not trying to figure out a new time. We all know how that feels. And it'll also be a lot more efficient for the library system to troubleshoot and maintain. So I think as we go forward with all the branches, that's something we're going to try to figure out.
Okay. And then I had another question. In your teen area, I see you have fiction bookshelves. Is there no nonfiction for them? Or
Oh, you know, that labeling might be out of date, Bunny. We haven't gone through and done a really comprehensive shelving design layout with Lynn and her team yet. And so I think those labels we just need to update to reflect the current where collection is currently laying out. So thank you. Yeah.
okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
I do.
Uh-huh.
I've got a couple of questions. What is that? What is the induction area?
That's the architect word for check-in area. This is where the check-in area is for the staff.
Oh, for the staff.
Yeah, they call that the induction.
yeah. it's where we check-
We can change our words, Lynn.
Yeah.
I think they were thinking about those pads, the FE Tech pads
Yeah.
that read the books.
Okay,
They're
so-
induction pads.
It's not for signing up for military. service.
Right. yeah.
We're deciding blood.
We're not recruiting here. So you showed about 9 computers, public computer stations now.
Mhm.
How many do we have now?
8.
8, so about the same.
We have one extra. And Wi-Fi too.
Okay, and then on the teen area, you said you're gonna freshen it up. But are you making more floor space in the teen area, or are we keeping that exactly the same? In other words, it's just a facelift. Is that sufficient to entice teens to really come?
I'm not sure, Derek, here towards you, is there a larger or smaller square footage for the teen area as compared to now? One,
We might have to do that calculation for you, Ray. I'm not sure we know the existing square footage right off the top of our tongue, but we could follow up right after this meeting and send you that comparison if you'd like.
what we do though is we add the advantage of having the meeting room, this little meeting space attached to it so that we can add programming or open it up for them. Because a lot of times when they're there, it's specific hours. It's not all day long. It's the 2 or 3 hours after school.
Yeah.
So it allows it to expand.
Now, on that meeting room, I think I misheard you. Did you say that it would not visible?
It would have, there are glass walls.
So that
Yes.
line on the right is a glass wall?
No.
Yes.
Yes.
That's a glass wall.
And we, here, I can try to annotate here. This currently we're showing as glass. And that's really a safety issue too, to make sure that staff can kind of keep their eyes on things. And so, and like Derek was saying, you get to see all the activity, which, you know, lets you know what all's happening in the building.
Right, teams love that. And also then, the children's area, is there an increased square footage there? Pretty much rearranging furniture and shelves.
I think that area is staying fairly consistent in square footage. But again, we can do a comparison for you if you'd like.
We might have gained a little space up in this corner, but we also gained the advantage of, we could actually spill into the meeting room now, which we couldn't do before. But other than that, that's about the square footage.
So about the same.
Yeah.
So on that operable wall for the meeting room, what type of wall is that? Is it, so it's soundproof?
Yeah, and I remember we talked about this last time. There has been a concern in a number of the branches with operable walls not performing real well and having sound transmission. And we have an acoustical engineer on all the projects who is advising us for a number of things, but obviously product selection for these doors. And so he gives us products that meet the NRC for sound transmission. So we have to get at least a 50. And usually it's the seals happen that sound leak. So we're gonna, we have a number of products that we can consider. And so that'll be an consideration.
Breaking up.
She was kind of cutting in and out.
Yeah.
Oh, was I cutting in or out?
Yeah.
No, I'm frozen.
Did you get the gist of that?
I think
Right.
just that.
Okay,
But the last question, sorry,
it's all right.
on the teen area, the dotted line across the bottom, that's the existing now, right? Or what is that? So the teen area is going to be open into, and I can't see what's below that, yeah.
Right. So what are
Display
the,
area.
what do the dotted lines mean that you have around the center of the building? I think that has to do with the ceiling height.
Yeah. Ceiling height.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ceiling height changes.
So the teen area is open into the display environment.
Yeah, Todd is correct. That dashed line in the middle of the building is actually the vaulted area that is existing. We're just trying to show kind of a reference of where that's at on the plan.
Yeah. So then the teen area is open to the display area.
Yes.
Correct.
Is there any way to decrease the sound into that area, from the teen area, because of vaulted ceiling, or is there dampening?
Yeah. Are you?
The teen door, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm asking about the noise coming out of the teen area. If we actually are successful in getting more teens into there.
Yeah.
noise versus,
Yeah. What's really great, Ray, is that space has a lower ceiling than the vaulted area right in front of it. And so that gives us step number one to noise containment. Number two, because we've enclosed it on 3 sides, we can also use the walls to add acoustic treatment so that the sound that is generated in that room is absorbed to a degree. But I think we've gone back and forth on enclosing the teen areas, and it, in a lot of ways, it feels like, for approachability and safety, it feels a little bit better to have it open. And I think that area right there in the center will be kind of a busy area too. And so there probably will be a little bit of noise in that portion of the building. If you're really looking for something quieter, you're probably going to go to the edges where we have the soft, comfy seating. And in that center, you can see we don't have, it's really mostly kind of browsing and display that you're exploring on foot. Does that make sense? We've tried to put noisy things next to noisy things and quiet things off to the side so that we don't have those kind of, uncomfortable adjacencies.
I'll add that we had a lot of conversation with our librarians that work with teens. And there were very strong sentiments about not shutting them off in a room. But it's a very fine compromise to kind of enclose them like we did here, but not completely shut them off so that they feel like they've been shunted out of the building. And you'll see that when we look at Redmond and when we look at other teen areas, we're trying to make that compromise.
yeah, that's always a quandary.
Yeah, and I think given the volume of teen usage of the Lapine branch, they will spill out anyway. I mean, there's, well, we hope more kids than can fit into that area. So, I mean, I think they'll be used library as well.
Maybe we should plan on that then. That's what we're shooting for, is greater to enlarge that area.
Well, I think, as Todd said, I think it's very time dependent. I mean, so they're in the library at certain times, but then at other times they're not there at all. So you don't want to reserve space, I wouldn't think, that is not going to be used. And what I like about this plan is that usage can kind of ebb and flow, because we've got a given container size, but children's can flow into the meeting room space can flow out for special events into the children's, teens can flow into the other meeting room. And so, I mean, I think that's the flexibility that we were aiming for, because I think it will be used more of the time.
So then in the children's area, the shelving is all portable.
Well, we haven't gotten to
Not that
design or talked about purchasing, but mobility is something that we have a strong desire for in all of our buildings.
Mhm.
And I think, clarify, Todd, this is a schematic approval. I mean,
Yes,
we're not down to fixtures, and this is like,
Right.
so good, thank you because I forget myself. So really what we're looking at right now is kind of the layout. The think walls and spaces is really what we're looking for you to weigh in on today. We have not gotten to the stage where we are actually looking. So even when they put pods like these computers,
Right.
that's just a sample of what could be. We have not had discussions about what that's going to look like, what the shelving is going to look like. Really, even as far as lighting and such, it's really about the walls and the layout.
Yeah, but so the rooms and the size capacities are what you're looking at with the walls.
Sure.
right.
Yeah.
So we thought the meeting room should be more flexible, divided into 2 or larger. That would be the comment you're looking for.
Sure.
Okay.
I have a question. So I know a lot of the libraries when we did the early going into the communities and talking to the communities about the libraries and what they wanted. And I think almost every community said that they would like some kind of a makerspace. And I realized that Sun River, but Lapine and Sisters are probably confined in what they can do. However, in looking at furnishings, are there any kind of movable furnishings where a makerspace could be created because that's something that people want within the area of the meeting space and the kids space? Is anything like that possible, or has that been tried in any other libraries?
I think.
Are you, wait, are you, is that, I'm just checking, are you asking the architects?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's for you, Ruth and Derek.
And could you repeat just the last portion of that question? I didn't quite catch all of it. Thank you.
She's basically talking about what we can do with maker spaces in this area. Is there furnishing we could use? Kind of acknowledging that we don't have as much space as we did in Central and Redmond to have.
Right. Right. I absolutely. And I think what we probably should try to do is, as we move more into picking out furniture, is think about what are the things that would support craft or making programs, or is it maybe it's not formal use, it's informal kind of drop-in individual use. So we want to talk about both usage types. And then I think we should think about what would store in the meeting room for that to occur really well there. Because that would be a great spot if you could, you know, stack all the chairs to one side and clear it out and have like a robotics program on the floor. Or if we have, you know, we would have tables in this space that we aren't showing right now. But if you could organize the tables in a way that you could set up really easily for a craft program. So I think we should add that to our list of functions as we start to dig into specifying furniture.
I have something too. If we are going to have some maker space, it seems to me like we're going to need storage for all the maker space stuff, you know, the robotics or the whatever. Is there storage planned in for stuff like that? I'm not sure what you call it, but.
Yeah, yes, there would be a lot of, you know, other accoutrements people want to food. Sorry.
You cut out again, Ruth.
I think she basically said, yes, you'd want that. That's kind of what she was just talking about, where you could use some of the storage space here. It's going to be something for us to look. Now, also don't forget, as a central district, we can move things around as well. It's going to be tougher in Sisters, Lapine, Sun River, and East Bend to have permanent type maker space, but very flexible space to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead, Ann.
I guess I have a comment. Excuse me, I'll take my mask off. I guess that concerns me a little bit that we're adding kind of new programming as far as maker space to the library. Our response from the community says they want more community type space. So we're kind of adding to the library, but we're not really adding room for them to do that. So if we look at Lapine here, we have the multi-purpose room, which will get lots of use, but if we keep adding more programs to that, then that, to me, almost is a concern that we're limiting then when that room can be used. For example, maker space after school for our teens, but then we have a community group that wants to use that as well. So I guess I'm a little bit concerned that we're adding to our libraries as far as programming and materials, but we're not really increasing the footprint to do that. So it's just more of a concern for me going forward.
Well, I think that's a really valid point. We're promising people more activity space, more library services. We're trying to squeeze it into the same space. And some walls around doesn't quite make it. There's a conflict. If the multi-purpose room is multi-purpose, all the time for everybody, then we really can't accommodate. I think I'd asked before, what would it, we don't have any structural restraints on actually increasing the footprint of the library, do we? There's nothing.
You have some constraints, and one, we only have so much land.
And budget, I would say.
Being large parking requirements, which we don't have there. And also we didn't go out for funding to increase the size of the building. So that would be a challenge for us as well.
We did go out for funding.
Not to increase the size of the smaller branches.
The goal with the funding was to remodel the buildings.
I have a comment on that. I thought when we talked about the redesigns of the branch libraries, it was to redesign and utilize the space better. So if we're trying to utilize this space better and move things around per architectural design, I think we should have more room for some. Certainly there's a limit to that, but I think we should be able to add things. If I'm wrong, Ruth, let me know.
Yeah, and maybe if I could chime in here, I feel like part of the reconfiguration of the meeting room was trying to do a lot of things for the library programming that they wanted to, knowing that we had this space constraint. And so while this plan kind of shows an auditorium setup, it also allows for that kind of sliding wall, operable panel wall to kind of open up into the library, put out some tables for makerspace kind of events, and knowing that this meeting room can be programmed and reserved in advance. So if there's a community meeting that wants to use it, well, then the makerspace kind of would not be programmed to conflict with those desires or like the advanced programming, but that it feels more of a part of the full library as opposed to kind of a separate room off of the lobby.
Yeah, we did talk about that a little bit, and maybe what I could jump in and, we haven't gotten to this point yet where we're showing you the furniture we've picked out, because we haven't gotten there, or the finishes. But one of the things we try to do as designers is think about the ways one space can do many things. And sometimes it's not about more space. So I'll give you, for instance, the kind of example. Meeting room, if it has a flooring that you can still finger paint on and do, Play-Doh and messy stuff, and it's not carpet, it's more of a rubber, something that's really easy to clean up, and you have a sink, all of a sudden that meeting room can be a craft program because you've got the environment that allows you to have a different type of event. And so sometimes it's not about more space. It's about just thinking about the things, the amenities in that space. And so I think as designers, we try to think about functionality that way too, Bunny, because there is no client in the world who can build as much space as they want. And that's just a function of being smart about our public resources too. So trust us that we're thinking about that. And I think as we come back with more development to take shape.
Yeah, and I wanted to say, when we had the original facilities use analysis, it indicated that the spaces in the smaller branches were adequately sized for their communities, and that those communities were not growing as quickly as Bend and Redmond were. So we had the majority of our growth occurring in the two larger communities. And so they did look at that to say, do we need a substantial change here? And, so they looked at Redmond and they said, yeah, we need a substantial change. So that's one reason the bond was structured the way it was structured, because those facility sizes were deemed to be appropriate for the communities they were serving. But what we wanted to do, we identified some areas where we could make the space more flexible and get a lot better use out of the building. And I think that's what
Yeah, that's great. And I wonder, in the interest of time, should we go through the rest of the presentation so you can see sisters also, and then we could kind of have time at the end for questions? I know we have that much time left, and I do want to make sure we get your questions on other visuals too. Would that work?
Yes, that was.
Yes.
So this is just an image of what it could potentially look like standing in with your back kind of against the meeting wall, the meeting room, looking towards the operable wall. And you can see here in this configuration, we actually have tables shown in the meeting room, and there's an event for kids happening in this particular scene. The colors, you can ignore the colors. Those have not been selected yet. They're just placeholders at this point. It's just trying to give us enough idea of what that space will look like with that wall opened up. And you can see how dynamic that space looks now. Next slide, Libby. And the next one. So we're going to jump into sisters. Go back to the site plan, please. At the north end of sisters, we are going to be, because the current sidewalk from Cedar Street up to the building does not meet ADA code, the city's going to make us upgrade that and put in a new ADA ramp there. We also, there's an existing exit on the north side of the building out by Main Street that just has a concrete pad to walk out on. Unfortunately, that no longer meets code, so we're going to extend a sidewalk around the north end of that building, and that's also going to connect to the little seating area that's on the northwest corner of the building, up in this area. Currently, it's completely unused because there's really no way to get to it except by traipsing across the grass, and being on the north side, at times it can be a little bit wet and nobody wants to walk across wet grass. So next slide. Let's go ahead, Libby, and zoom in on the vestibule entry area, and we'll do the same thing. Sisters kind of has the same problems or same issues that Lapine does, in that you walk in and you're kind of like in this weird space that doesn't really feel all that great. So we're going to open it up, put in the security grill once again, so we have after hours access to the multi-purpose room. The multi-purpose room can then access the men's and women's restroom and provide those functions. Let's move to the left to the staff areas. So like Lapine, the sister staff area is also getting opened up and reconfigured a little bit to make it a little more user-friendly for the staff, more efficient as well. So currently there's no break room at Sisters. So at the north end of the building, we're going to be adding a break room over here at this end, relocating the supervisor's office, and then creating the actual workspace We're also relocating the existing exterior book drop. If you remember, currently it's over here at the north end of the building and nobody seems to find it. As a resident of Sisters, it took me forever to figure out where it was when I would have to stop and drop books off for my boys. So we're going to relocate that over by the front entry, which will make it much more user-friendly and much easier for people to find. Let's slide to the right over to the multi-purpose room. Much like Lapine, we're also adding an operable wall that opens out into the children's area for the same reasons. We want to be able to have a space that functions and can serve many purposes. It can expand and contract based on the uses. It would be able to spill out into the children's area, like say, for instance, during the quilt show or something like that. Or during an art show that Sisters likes to do as well around town. Let's go ahead and slide up the page to the children's area. This area is a little bit larger than Lapine, so we have some opportunities to do some other things with furniture, create some nice little seating areas for story time. Shelves, create some different types of spaces for different age kids, as well as we're showing some computer spaces for the kids. I know my boys like to use the library there, and the computers are always an item that they seem to fight over. We're creating this tutor room. This one is an existing room, so we're basically just repurposing it into a tutor slash wellness room that would be able to be used and scheduled as a small conference type space. Let's go ahead and move to the left. So the current where we're showing the teen area, that is currently the computer area. We're kind of taking that away from the front and center. The computer area is not exactly attractive to look at, so it's not that we're trying to hide it, but we're going to move it down over into this area a little bit. Same configuration as Lapine with the 3 pods of computers, and then we're going to put that area where the computers were is going to be the teen spaces. One, it activates that space. As soon as you come in the entry, you're going to be able to see the activity of the teen room. And much like Lapine, we also have a very dynamic area where there's a lot of browsing and that type of thing happening. So the noise isn't so much a concern, similar to Lapine. We are claiming this existing room. We're actually putting a glass wall in the front of it, and we're turning it into a smaller meeting room, which was a desire and a need in the city of Sisters. There just is not meeting space there. And then much like Lapine, we're getting rid of the existing gas fireplace, propane fireplace, and we're going to add an electric fireplace in the space. One of the issues that Sisters has quite frequently is people complain of the smell of gas. It's just a function of gas fireplaces, but you have to take those complaints or comments seriously, shut the building down, make sure it's safe. So we're going to eliminate the need for that issue. And then we have our adult collection here, as well as a couple small, maybe a work area or a reading area as well. So that's pretty much the gist of it. Much like Lapine, we are kind of reconfiguring the existing storage spaces so we can open up that wall into the children's spaces as well.
Okay, questions? I'll start off on this one. Is there sink access in the multi-purpose room? Because now they have a little kitchen. Oh, there it is right there. Well, there you go.
Yep.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that that remained because that really informs a lot of what can happen in that room. And I know people would miss that if it were gone.
Yeah, I mean, that's obvious. That's obviously an important thing, being able to, whether you're making coffee or you just need to wash your hands, or 4-H club rinse it out or something, to be able to use it. You know, there's always a need for a sink.
And the doors from the meeting room that go to the outside, do they remain the same size? It's I was always hoping we could somehow extend that in the nice season, which lasts about a month, but out to the area outside.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, they stay as they're currently shown. As Matt mentioned with Lapine, unfortunately, the budget just doesn't expand or allow for a massive grab of square footage and expansion.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions?
I think it looks good.
Let me ask you on the staff area, how does the proposed area compare to what we have now?
Say that again, Ray.
What's the staff area, what's the square footage proposed as compared to the present?
I think you were asking about, you're kind of breaking up a little bit, but I think you were asking about the square footage and how it compares to it currently. Basically, it stays the same. It's more of just a rejigger. We're just moving some spaces around to make it more efficient use of the space.
And then I see on the meeting room, so if you go down, we'll go to the right. That remains basically the same size.
Yeah, that's the same. It actually gets a little bit bigger because in the current meeting room, you have where the operable wall is, you have countertops and a storage closet. So we're actually reclaiming that space and pushing it. The storage moves over to the left a little bit, and then the sink and countertop area gets recessed into that space. So it is actually a net increase in usable space. But
nice.
For all intents and purposes, the room stays the same size.
But again, it opens, it has the capacity to open out into more space.
For sure. But it looks like
Yeah.
the capacity is 81 in it, or is this just on the seats just for occupying space in your architectural drawing? Did I count 81 in there? What seems like more than we do now?
Looks like 63, maybe? 1, 2, 3,
9 by 7.
7. Yep.
And then you're showing 9 by 7.
9 by 6.
9 by
9 by 7 is 63.
53.
And that's just this, there's just this layout, you know, it can be configured a number of ways.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, any
One
other?
thing I've learned is it doesn't matter how we show meeting rooms laid out as architects. The users will always come up with inventive ways that we never even crossed our mind on how they'll get used. So.
As long as the fire marshal's not in town.
That is true. That is true.
Any further questions?
What really is the restriction though for making the patio area off the meeting room more usable?
There wouldn't be I mean, you can, as far as being able to use it currently, just by opening up those doors, it is very functional, usable space. It is undercover. So, I mean, it's actually covered on two sides, along Cedar and to the south. So, in an art show event or something like that, you could actually spill out into that space, and would be a great space to have a street fair. I know they do that a lot down there in that area, with City Hall and the school district admin office.
Is there any way to have, like they're doing with the restaurants now, putting down vinyl or plastic or whatever walls, or close the space so it's more wind resistant, maintains a little better heating? So we could actually use it more than what Bunny says, the 1 month, but maybe 2 months. Can those be built in there or pull down?
We currently don't have anything shown or planned for that type of space. It would be, I guess it would be up to the library district to decide, or the librarians to decide how to use that, if that was the case.
I think the limiting factor ends up being the doors. We can certainly move things out and have on the patio, but if it's not, you know, big wide doors to where you could include a meeting can extend out, then you know, that's harder to extend out. But yes, for art shows and kids programs, yes, that's definitely using the patio.
Yeah, I'd be interested when you look at furniture and fixtures, paying some attention to those outside spaces. And I think they're not used right now because they're not very inviting. But I think with, you know, even just some minimal seating out there, I think that people would be attracted and go out there if there were places to sit. And that's up to the staff to, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, they know the usage of the building way better than we do, but it seems like that would be a way to capture some really pleasant outdoor space.
Yeah, that's a great point, Ann. And the other thing that's come up is outlets. You know, can you still use a device if you're out there? Mm-hmm.
Any other comments or questions?
Did you have a rendering to show us? There you go. That's looking into the children's area and the meeting room from the main area.
Exactly. So you're looking back towards that entry so we can show how it's opened up. And currently there's just kind of a dark little hole there. And we're more than doubling the size of that entry and making it feel much more inclusive as you are traveling either way, either from the library out to the lobby or from the lobby in.
Okay. Well, our action item on this would be to approve the site plans and the major components outlined in this presentation for the Lapine and Sisters Library facilities. And again, this approval is necessary before they move forward into more detailed designs of these buildings. So I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the review designs and for Sisters and Lapine as presented.
Okay.
I second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, 3-2. Thank you. And now, we have bond updates from Greg.
Good afternoon, everyone. kind of jump right in here and move it along. The work report or pack included our monthly report. And, over the last couple of months, we did a lot of updating our project plan to schedule to the budget. And so, the first main section on our report is about project schedule. And so we really did a full reevaluation of the project schedule with our CMGCs, Kirby Nagelhout and Sunwest Builders for all of the projects as we went through. They drafted some initial schematic level construction schedules for us, and also provided feedback on the overall process that we're going to go through, as we move forward. Same with Miller Hall and their team on the FF&E procurement, process of design and procurement of that. And then, we looked at all of the elements of the schedule relative to design, permitting, and approvals, and where we were at with each of the different properties and packages and what the current status was. In the end, the net result is, for the most part, everything stayed very similar and consistent. I updated the schedule matrix there on page 2. And, there's a couple things like with Central and Redmond, we were actually looking to pull forward the start of some elements of construction and overlap more elements of construction. So with Central, it's getting started in there a little bit earlier than we planned. I think we were planning October, and it looks like we'll be able to start in late September with our grading. We'll be packaging the work the way we get it permitted for construction permits to allow us to secure we get site permits first, which allows site work, and then a structural permit, which allows the building structural elements to commence, and that's all the building foundations, etc. Then we'll get our full building permit, and it's a very normal process with the city and within the industry. We worked through this with Miller Hall and their consultant team, as well as with Kirby Nagelhout, and it helps to streamline the process and really builds in a little bit better time at the beginning of the project, where you really want to not necessarily make up time, but use our time very wisely. So as we get near the end, so our end date didn't change. We'll be really looking at over our next major update of how do we, on the end, install all of our FF&E, finish our construction in those. So, that was the change there on Central. On Redmond, something very similar. We really looked at what work can we start? When do we want to close the library? And that shows up here in early January of 23. And then we go into a time period of where we need to do any remediation of the building, because it is an old building. It's likely to have some levels of hazardous materials that you have to appropriately remove before demoing the building, and then doing the demo and the grading. And again, there's permits that we can pull early and commence that work. Again, it builds us some time. We actually saw a sizable shortening of the schedule from a September opening to an August opening on Redmond. So it improved there a number of weeks, simply by looking at how our activities were set, what they were overlapped, and what the plan was there for that. So that was a really good outcome by getting started a little bit earlier. We're also going to deliver the project back to the community earlier. And so that was a positive outcome there. On the Sisters in Lapine, they're very similar to what they were before. There was just some slight tweaks. I think we had a couple of things happening on December 30th, and we said, okay, let's show that as actually happening after the new year on the 1st or on the 2nd. And then a slight adjustment to the opening that actually pulled it back about a week on those two. Sun River, we pushed that one out a little a bit longer as we really went through the design of the building with SunWest Builders, our CNVC, and looked at what we're doing at the front of the building and how we're going to reconfigure the roof structure there and the entryway. We all really felt that, hey, we need to allow a little bit more time in the construction phase for Sun River. It's just a bigger project, more intensive. You know, and they looked at it and with their initial schedule said, look, we think we need probably 3 or 4 weeks more. So we've allowed for that and showed that. East Bend has stayed really pretty tight. It actually shortened up a couple weeks simply on how we looked at the overlap between construction work and the installation of the FF&E and moving staff back into it. So those were really pretty, you know, that one stayed pretty close to the original. Downtown Bend, we really looked at how the overlap of the downtown Bend operations of moving staff out of downtown Bend into Central and the whole transition time, the amount of time of opening Central before closing downtown Bend. And so we looked at that and added some more time in there to not rush ourselves in that aspect. Is that I think it's really important that the library can get in and operate Central and make sure it's functioning well before we just close the doors downtown. The construction period, we looked at that again with SunWest and had them give us their opinion on what they thought based on what they saw scope of work was. And so we added a little bit more time in the construction period for downtown. It's a little bit bigger. You know, I think in the early schedules we had, we actually developed that duration off of our proposal schedule at the very beginning. And so as we understood what the scope of work was, we felt we wanted to have a little bit more time in there. So the end date on that pushed out about a month, which was a bit of us pushing the start out to have a little more cushion between Central and start of downtown, and then a little bit more time on the construction. So it ended up being about a month out on that one. So from a big picture view, those were the changes that occurred in our schedule. And we drive it through our master development schedule, which is a very extensive scheduling document. I updated the summary schedule that is in the board pack to align so that, and really tried to show all of those elements in there as closely as I can in that type of bar chart there. So otherwise, you know, from that standpoint, everything that the work that is occurring and executing plan moving forward is tracking to that schedule. So we're moving right along on that aspect of it. The budget aspect, you know, we went through a lot of schematic cost budget. So the schematic plans that you guys have seen for Central and Redmond and Lapine Sisters, as well as our conceptuals on Sun River downtown and East Bend, they were all rolled into another round of major budget updates, which transpired across from late December all the way through February here. And what that did is let me look at, okay, what are our cost estimates? What are our budgets? How have we allocated funds between each of the individual projects within the bond area? And then within the individual projects, some of them we had, you know, large contingencies that we were holding. So Central was one like that, when we allocated all of the reserves back in December. We put them into our owner's contingency versus into hard cost, soft cost, owner cost. Really waiting to get to the schematic level. The schematic level as compared to the conceptual level is an extremely much higher level of cost estimating and confirmation of what our scope is and what the cost is. And so it's a much more reliable cost estimate for forecasting out what those project costs are going to be. So on Central, you saw that we shifted some dollars because we had a big owner contingency. I shifted them up into construction because we really had a good budget established on our construction costs. I think overall, the central budget increased a bit as well as we went through all of the construction costs, the soft cost, and the FF&E ownership costs there. Redmond saw a reduction in cost there. And I think that as I went through and really looked at it, the original construction estimate that was created at the time of the bond just seemed to always be much higher. Some of our owner costs for temporary facilities, for the FF&E were a little bit lower. So some of our savings on construction costs was shifted down to that. Some of it ended up being shifted to the other projects. But Redmond is tracking real well from a budget standpoint. All of them are tracking real well. But it was generating excess costs that got moved to other projects. Downtown Bend was very similar. It was pretty stagnant. You know, I read there's some savings in construction based on the budgets we got from JLD and SunWest, but I bumped up our furniture, our FF&E, and that was one that the FF&E budget that was originally established was pretty low as compared. And so with the development of the Redmond plans and the Redmond budget, which the two buildings are really similar, right? 2-story, almost the same square footage, and the usage with the renovation, that we could really look at what are we going to spend in FF&E on downtown Bend. And so that adjusted to that budget. As a percentage, the branches, being the 4 branches, saw the greatest increase on a percentage basis. And that was kind of across the board. I think as we work through our budgets on the cost of all 4, so Sisters Lapine, Sun River, and East Bend, each of their costs, construction costs, increased a bit. And so we recognized that, and the FF&E cost had an increase this time around. And what it was is they developed the schematic designs that you just saw. There's corresponding development of the schematic FF&E budgets based on those designs of, okay, now that we've got the plan laid out, they go through and they count all the parts and pieces. We account for all of the AMH system that goes into every different facility and how we're going to utilize it and what parts and components. So that was an area that we saw where each of those buildings incrementally went up in cost there. I think that based on where we're sitting today on the scope of work for the branches, as you've seen today, and that translates very closely into what will happen at Sun River. Sun River gets a add-on at the front entrance, as we saw in the concepts. And so the budget at Sun River, it's a smaller building, but its budget is 2.6 million, where the others are like 2.1 and 2.4 construction. Because of that cost in there. So those are where we really saw the major fluxes of moving money between the projects. One of the things that I look at very closely and watch is we've got cost estimates, and they're preliminary designs, preliminary numbers that we're looking at. What are our levels of risk management? And in this case, cost management. And so that's what are our contingencies? What are we looking at for escalation because of the market? One of the things that I think that we've done is to bring from our bond cost estimate forward. At conceptual, we got a little bit better reading of where is the market today, of what is current market pricing. And as we got into schematic, that became a much more defined cost estimate, right? Because GCs and our cost estimator were now really looking at plans and parts and pieces, and they could do a much more detailed cost estimate as compared to the conceptual, where they're estimating ideas and the thoughts and the dreams, right? Now they're estimating lines on paper and much more substantial. So I think we've adjusted our cost estimates to what our today's dollars are, as compared to what the bond estimate was back in the day. So that's where we saw, the movement of money from our owner's contingency reserves into our construction line items, into our FF&E line items, because they're better defined. Therefore, they're better estimates there. So it brings us to current dollars. So we're forecasting now from an escalation standpoint and contingency standpoint. Okay, what do we see going forward from today versus what were we seeing going forward from almost 2 years ago? And so it's a more reliable cost estimate. Within our cost estimates from our cost estimator, from our CMGCs, and from Miller Hall on the FF&E packages, we build into those estimates what are called design estimated contingencies. So those are contingencies that what do we think isn't drawn on the plan, but we know we want in the project. And that's why we hired the CMGCs early, right? Is to help us know today what we should expect the building to cost in a year, 2 years from now, 3 years, based on what we think we're going to draw in the final document. And so that's a process that they go through, look at. They have their contingencies, and then we ask them, well, okay, what do you think that contingency is going to be spent on? And we spend time with them and the design team to say, okay, Paul, what do you think? Is this where you're going to put more enhancement into the designs, whether it's in the finishes, in the skin, those things? And so we look at that and we say, okay, does that make sense? All of the projects generally have anywhere from 15 up to 25% design estimating contingencies in their numbers. Then we have a factor in there that both the CMGCs and JLB really work on helping us determine, okay, what's our best estimate on escalation? So escalation is what's happening with inflation and the growth. And that's a crystal ball thing. It changes all the time, and sometimes you're high and you're low on that. But we build in a separate contingency for escalation into those numbers. And so they're built into those cost estimates. Separate from that is we are maintaining our owner's contingency. And so, and I showed that on the report there, is that our owner's contingency is that we're still just about 10% of our budget is contingency. So that is, call it the third line of defense in our cost management and how we look at that. And so as we sit today, I feel very comfortable that we've got 15 to 20% design estimating contingencies, escalation of about 5 to 7% annually figured in from now to when we buy subcontracts. And it varies for each project, right? And so they use our schedule to say, okay, Central, we're going to start buying here and buying here. Downtown Bend has a much higher escalation because we're going to buy it way out. So there, it's time oriented. And then we have our contingency for us to look at and say, okay, what do we want in the project? What do we want to ask for a change? What's owner driven versus design? So, and that's something that owners drive cost, always have, always will. And so we watch that, we look at that. We evaluated all of our detailed line items in the budget to say, okay, do we believe all of our individual estimates are sound? So that ideally we've got it captured there, and that contingency isn't going to need to be used. But that's the nature of development. It does happen. Contingencies do get used at some point. So I will tell you that I'm very confident in the budget. Very happy with where we sit today in the budget. Gone through this with the DPL team in detail as we built and updated the budget to feel good about where we're at this point. I think that the things that we've identified, all of the various consultants and cost expenditures that we would expect to spend, that they're identified in line items. There's a budget for them, so that we're not hitting contingencies for things we should know about. It's there for the unknowns. So that's what the update is. And I've updated, the report. I modified the form on the branches to break out the line items for the individual branches so that you can see what those construction costs are. We are on the FF&E. They're still lumped together. And we're really looking at, is there a way that we can buy our FF&E in a large package, right? To get some real volume pricing. We want consistency so that the chairs, the tables are consistent throughout the district to be shared and used and get some real good buying power. Same with the shelving systems. While there's a certain amount that are going to be custom to each facility, there's going to be a lot of things that what can we buy that's standardized. One, it makes repairs and replacement and reuse a much simpler process, but also helps us to really work to use our buying power because of the volume that we're going to do. So I've held that as a single. I've got them in the detailed breakdowns. I got some breakouts for each individual one, but I combine them to look at it as how do we buy this in bulk. So from a budget standpoint, that's kind of where the budget update is. Billings are progressing. Right now costs are predominantly for the design fees and consultant fees. And that's moving right along on that aspect. I think, look back on procurement and contracts, we'll talk about those after this. We have two items that we want to go through with you. One is some design assist roles. These are key subcontractors I would like to engage early on. So I'll talk about that, as well as the certification, lead certification that we talked about for Central and Redmond. We got that finalized. And so it's actually bringing to you the final costs to have approval of that so that we can execute Miller Hall's change order for that work. And I'll go through that with the summaries that I wrote up on those two. Insurance, that's just progressing on the projects themselves and status. So entitlements on Central Library this past month, we central entitlements went to the Planning Commission in February. That was approved by the Planning Commission, and they're now scheduled to go to City Council here in March. And that is for our text amendment process. Our site plan application is being developed and prepared. Those will go in March also. They get submitted here in a couple of weeks. And that will continue that part. There are two separate parts that run somewhat concurrent with each other. And that'll include our annexation documents and those. So throughout the last month, we've been multiple meetings with city and staff and ODOT to talk about everything that we're doing, what the applications have included in them, and what needs to be submitted. And so those packages are being finalized. One big element is our traffic, and it's, you may remember back in December, we submitted our TFR, it's our first traffic report, traffic facilities report. And then in early January, we submitted, which is called the TIA. It's a traffic impact analysis. That is done by our traffic engineer. Those went submitted into the city, and the city staff has been reviewing them. They've given us back their comments which comes back to us in another one called a TAM. And it's just an acronym for the city's response back to our traffic plans, and very positive of what we're doing and how we're doing it, what the requirements are relative to traffic. And these are the streets and the connection to the roundabout, and connection to the other streets, whether it be Beretta or Jameson and that. So that all is in there. That's been processed, and that becomes part of our final site application that's going in. Redmond is going through a similar site planning activity. It's simpler because it's an existing property already there and already operating, functioning as a library. So our site plan is really about what's the new library look like, what's the new parking and the circulation of vehicles in and out of the property going to look like, what's our building going to look like. This is their initial approval. We had good work sessions throughout the month with the city of Redmond staff, planning staff, to go through that. Our traffic engineer has gone through and done a traffic study to bring it up to date. It goes in as part of our site application process, but our traffic engineer has been able to review that with city staff, with the city engineer, to say, here's what the results are, here's what it's looking like, and how it's traffic going to flow in and around the property and in and out of it. So that it's really so that, one, we're giving them the information they want, they have an understanding of it, and they give us, any thoughts or concerns that they may have about what we're submitting. So that way it helps to streamline that process. And so that is well underway. Not expecting any surprises there. That'll go in, like I said, this month. And the site application processes for both Central and Redmond are about a 4-month process or so. So around end of July and early August, those would be anticipated to be fully approved. And that's what then lets them start approving building permits. We don't have any permits on Redmond until next spring, but with our first permits at the beginning of the year. Central comes in a little bit sooner. So those are the main entitlements. It only occurs on those 2 properties. All of the others are building renovations, so there's no entitlement issues on those. Relative to design, I think that for the most part, you guys have seen where we're at, with Central and Redmond. We saw and went through the schematic designs, looked at them. The team has moved into the design development phase, which will continue into April time period. And at that point, those design development documents will come back, and Miller Hall will come in and do a presentation on those. And so those documents, those plans are continuing to be developed. As we told you, we meet weekly with the design team, go through, have work sessions on all different types of components of the systems and components of how the buildings can operate, and starting into discussing what are the materials, what are the finishes, and what is it going to look like. So when you see this next round of plan development, it'll really start to bring out a lot of that information. So instead of just seeing a simple floor plan, you're going to start to see elevations and sections, see into the building and see what it looks like. It becomes a very exciting time, right? It's a lot of fun to get into this phase of design. The floor plans and the layout is a little mundane. This is the exciting. It's an important part. It sets the framework. We're really going to get into some fun stuff here in the next few months to get into design development and see where that takes us. It also will be, back to our schedule update and to our budget update. We'll have another major round of updates that occur as those design development phases finish. And so, and that's going to be in that April and May timeframe where I see doing another major evaluation, and because we'll be doing cost budgets with that. One of the things is our CMGCs are really actively involved with our design team. They attend with us to meetings with the structural engineer, and been very pleased with really looking at how the building is being designed on a structural aspect and how it's being put together, because you want that to be very efficient, very cost effective. The structure of the building is a very important component, but it's not the thing that you always see and admire in a building. Some of it's buried underground, right? But it's like you can pour a lot of money into that. And so they've been very good at engaging with the design team, and the design team engaging with them on looking at a variety of options, which help to maintain our budget and look at where we can save costs in structures so that we can spend costs in finishes and in programming what we want to use the building for. So that process has been really moving along well through the design. On the branches, as you see, we're at the schematic, we're ready to release them to move forward into design development on Sisters and Lapine. The Sun River and East Bend are planned to commence their schematic design here in the middle of March. And Todd has let me know that you guys had your work session this week, and that we're going to step back on East Bend and take a look at, okay, what do we really want to do? We want to try and reduce the expenditure there, maximize what we can do in the program, but take another look at that. So we talked to Miller Hall about that yesterday and let them know that we're going to set up a work session with them to say, let's rethink what we're doing here, to be able to come back to DPL and to yourselves with, hey, here's our new ideas of what we do at East Bend. And so we'll adjust our schedule to accommodate that. East Bend really operates on its own. It's not because of Central and downtown happening. It can really function somewhat independently. Our goal was to have it done before we close downtown. And that way we'd always have, ideally, 2 libraries open here in Bend. East Bend and downtown, East Bend and Central. So, but I think that our schedule allows that amount of time, from what we were planning for an opening, we have many months to flex on that. So that's very much in the works. It's something we just had a high-level discussion yesterday with the design team about, but we'll start engaging on that, and hopefully we'll have some good ideas to present to you at the next board meeting coming up here. So that's kind of where we sit on the design phase. That's really kind of everything I think I hit on. So any questions or thoughts?
I think that was a great report. It's a great report.
So Ray, I believe you had a question for Ray.
Yeah. Can you give us the total cost for all the infrastructure besides streets, water, sewer, electrical, any other things we have to pay for in terms of infrastructure, site costs?
So on Central, and the way I look at it is you got site development or site costs, right? So it's anything outside the building. And so it would be the grading, the parking lots, the streets.
No, I'm just looking at what the city's gonna remove. We have to put in streets, we have to pay for water, sewer, electrical connections. Anything on connecting Brenda up there. Are we also gonna have to pay for the extension of Jameson?
We do.
We do. So all of those costs, what do those come to?
So for just the offsite, which would be the street improvements. And so that would be the extension of Jameson, the extension of Britta, and the building of Roll. And so within that is the grading, the asphalt pavement, the curb and gutter, concrete work, sidewalks,
Everything.
the landscaping that would go around, sewer and water that will be extended in the streets. Storm drain, there is none because City of Bend now requires all storm drain to be infiltrated into the ground on all properties. And so like all of our storm drain is an on-site cost.
Don't have a swale there?
It actually dry wells and put the water back into the water table. We do have some swales, but they're really not situated well enough to do, infiltration through the swale. So we're doing dry wells. We have a little bit of catch basins on our streets that tie to our dry wells, but we don't have main storm drains. In the old days, you would build storm drain lines in the streets, and we don't do that anymore here. Street lighting, so all of that would be in there, and that was in the number that I had given out. I want to say it's just under $4 million for that, and that comes from Kirby out of their estimate of what that cost is for all of the street improvements.
So that number you gave us is 3.8 million or so.
Yeah.
Includes all of the sewer, water,
Yes.
electrical connections, storm drains, all that,
It does.
not just street.
It includes the streets.
Right.
Yeah, everything in there, but no, it does not include what's on our property, right? Which is specifically for our on-site.
Right, but that's our cost.
Yeah,
Normally,
right.
this would be considered additional cost for the city.
Well, it would depend, when you develop a piece of property, it's normally a cost, and that's why ACC included it in there, is that as you develop a piece of property, you're gonna build those streets and then dedicate them back to the city. If you go into a piece of property that is already developed and existing, those streets have already been built and then paid for. But typically, the cities will always require you to build it and dedicate it back to them. They don't like to build them for you. Once they own them, then they get to rebuild them, as we see them doing all the
Right,
time
right.
here, and renovating them. But the initial construction is generally a development cost.
Good, okay, so
Yeah.
3.8.
Just to point out, when you say ACC, that was the cost estimate pre-bond.
Yes.
So it was a known cost to us, and it was built into the amount of the bond that we asked.
Yeah.
I like the way you break down the buckets.
Yeah.
And the only thing that concerns me here is the escalation costs.
Mhm.
You're saying 5 to 7%.
Annually.
I'm like, yeah, with the way construction's going and the way the world situation is going.
It really does. It varies a lot. We've been using a 4% escalation over the past few years on a lot of our projects. On an annual basis. And it is one. It's sometimes you think things are going to go way up. And it's surprising, even though you'll see like spikes. So in the lumber market, and it really hits the news, right? Lumber shoots way up, and it's 100% over, and then it shoots way down. It's a factor where, okay, that's affecting the material cost, but it doesn't necessarily always affect the labor cost, the profit margins, and the other components of your total cost. So when our materials market fluctuate, copper does this, structural steel does this, lumber does this. They are big ones. Drywall, gypsum will fluctuate some, not to the degree that those others. The metals seem to be ones that fluctuate over time. That's what they've done. So those are really moving the number on our material cost component. And so when you look at a total construction cost of it, you see a lot of material, but in actuality, the bulk of the percentage is in labor, in the cost of building it, equipment cost, and supplemental supplies. It's almost a 60-40 split. 40% of material, 60% of labor and supervision and profits and overhead. The things that you're paying to the subcontractors and the general contractors and even the material vendors. They have their when you buy from a material vendor, it's mostly material cost, but there's the trucking and delivery aspect of that labor there. So that percentage, while we may see a, you know, figuring is it a 4%, a 5%, 6% escalation on the total cost. Because we apply it to everything across the board, not just to the material, which says that material may actually escalate 15, 20% of the material cost, or 25%. But it's so heavy on labor that labor isn't moving as much. The labor market is not as volatile. As far as that goes, it's the amount of hours that we see worked on a project. So how much time is it going to take? So the quantity of hours is a big driver in labor cost. Hourly rates move the needle a little bit, you know, as wages are increased, and that goes. We are prevailing wage on this project, and it's set that way. It's estimated that way because we're a public entity, and so those wages are actually very static. They increase, but they don't spike. They are set at a much higher rate that we're already paying, and they move slower because they're fixed by contracts and establishments of those. For BOLI rates here in Oregon, which is the organization that manages those labor rates that we pay, they adjust them twice a year, January and July. And so we see very small movements in there. So it's back to how do we think about that escalation? That's how we look at it. And so as we're working on all of our projects, escalation is a real thing. I will tell you, there was times when we never put anything in for escalation, but the market was much more stable. Over the last few years, with the growth that the whole economy has seen over the last like 10 years, right? There hasn't been up and down. It's been just keep going. We've had to pay attention to escalation more lately and start truly adding it in there, because market competition wasn't forcing the cost down. Everybody has gotten so busy that drives cost.
Yeah, I'm so concerned that material costs will not come back down again. And I'm worried that even things like concrete are going up there in the scarcity. So the prevailing wage, everybody wants to work in prevailing wage, is already so high.
Yeah,
I agree. It doesn't ratchet up really fast.
Right.
So the increase of a very big number, the percentage of a very big number is a very big number.
Yeah.
So, no, my only concern is 5 to 7. If you're comfortable with that,
yeah,
then okay.
Yeah.
I was looking at our last project that I've been involved with here in the last 2 years. We underestimated.
Yeah. I think we started with a good baseline. So the estimate, I always refer back to the ACC cost estimate that was done for the pre-bond. They had a really good level of contingencies because it was so preliminary, and escalation in there that that has aided us. Our bond premium, when we sold the bonds, we sold at a very opportune time, and we generated a really good bond premium. And that has aided us in absorbing a lot of our most recent escalations. In reality, that was a really good thing there that helped us absorb what we've seen in the last 2 years in there and not have to cut program, but to absorb that cost. So those were some good factors that the district has really benefited from.
Greg, I have a little bit of a clarification. When you were making the presentation on the roads and the Jameson and the underground construction, there's nothing new in that, is it? That was there all along. That's what we had planned for. There's no surprises with that, is there?
That's correct. It was always in our program to do
Okay.
and our budget to do.
Yeah, it's similar to the rest of the building plan. That was in our budget and that was what we planned.
Yes.
Good, thank you.
Okay. Any further questions, or we're lagging a little bit? Do people need a break now, or, okay, let's take a short 5-minute break and come back in 5 minutes.
Okay. Bunny, I sent you an email regarding executive session, just in case you check your email. Yeah. I don't have one. Well, I can't do that.
I don't know.
Well, otherwise, well, if there's some way I can, how can I put all these people in the lead? Here, can you?
Sorry.
All right. Robert, are you still on?
I am.
I'm gonna try to put you on here. Sure. Oh, yeah. Let's see where.
Oh, sorry, I just, like, as you were asking that, I just hibernated my computer. Let me wake back up. Are you trying to just get it so it displays the primary panel?
No, when you go into executive session, I need people that aren't part of that to be not on the.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, Bunny, are you back?
Mute my video.
Oh, she's back. Okay,
I'm here.
okay, good. We didn't want to start without you.
And Bunny, I don't know if you saw my chat, but for executive sessions, just stay on the Zoom and we have figured it out, so.
Oh, okay, I don't need to call in. That was my question. When do I call in?
No, just stay on Zoom.
Okay, so our next item is lead certification costs with Greg.
So within the packet that was submitted was a couple of summaries. One is the bond program lead accreditation fees. And so in January, we talked about and the board approved to seek a lead certification on Central and on Redmond. And to do that, we need to have our design team perform, the actual process of accumulating all the information, processing it with the lead group, and getting it certified. And there's a whole process that they go through. And one of the things that we talked about was often we'll hire a lead consultant who works very closely with submitting that. Once we notified Miller Hall that we wanted to seek certification and to process that, and that we were going to look at bringing on a lead consultant, they let us know that they actually had lead consulting in-house. And one, because they're a real firm believer in the value of lead certification and some of the real rich values that we liked about them. And so they were able to provide us with a proposal to provide not just the work that them and their design consultants will do as architects, but all of the processing to submit and secure our LEED certification. And so they gave us proposals. I've gone through those proposals. They were very itemized with each of their consultants and themselves, hours and time. For the central, it's 154,605, and then for Redmond, it's 116,180. It's just a very difference between the size of the projects and the complexity of them. And so the request today is for the board's approval, to allow Todd to execute their change order for that amount, those amounts. Within the budget that I talked about, I've anticipated those costs. So as we adjusted the budgets, I've moved funds to the line item for architectural fees. So that's been anticipated in the current budget up to date. So unless there's questions,
The numbers that I have on page, on this number chart, the summary from the hall. 154,687. It's in the tens of dollar difference. We're approving something lower than what they asked for. We're going to use a discount.
You know, I used on that page, under this column here where it's 154,605. I think what it is there was the $82.50 reimbursable expenses in the column on the far left.
The far left.
Up on.
Oh, HW.
Yeah, they have a little bit, and we already have an established budget for reimbursables that we pay on an hourly basis. You know,
that comes out.
So I didn't need to increase my reimbursable budget.
Okay.
So I just asking for the fee.
That's the real.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
They put that in there as what they think they may spend, but it's like, I got a budget sitting over here that's gonna cover that. That's why there was the difference between that.
Okay, any other?
I did have two questions. Can you give us any examples of how they're going to utilize the LEED project ideas into the landscaping? Do you know if they discussed that?
We do, and there's points within, so LEED affects all of the elements of the project.
Okay.
Building design, site design, and materials. Relative to landscaping, it's the plant type. So like we're really looking at native plants that are drought resistant, native to this area. When you're using those, you get points. And then irrigation and water is where most of our LEED points will be around our irrigation design. And so, yes, we are seeking to pursue points. And as we talked about in January, we set silver as our minimum. We saw, that they have a potential scorecard already established at our current designs that we think we can actually have a real good chance at achieving gold on these projects without having to do more, but do what we are continuing to do, because we are really, I think, have a good design going forward for that element. Yes, Rick.
I thought it was that we need to get somebody else to certify our leads so that we have a third party that says we're actually doing what we're supposed to do. So can we actually use our architectural firms to say they're doing what they say they're doing, or should we actually go outside and?
The lead organization actually is the ones who will certify what we do. There's a lot of, so lead consultants don't actually certify
So they're overseeing that we
They-
actually did.
Well, no, they don't do that. The lead consultant really packages all the information come from all of the designers, and we'll get some information from our contractor.
Mhm.
And they assemble it, they submit it into lead organization
Okay.
and process it and communicate with lead about what we've submitted, and address any questions. The actual verification is in the documentation we generate, leads review and leads question of it. I don't think lead will actually do like a physical inspection. There's a certain level of trust that is put in there, that the level of documentation and what they need to see for us to achieve certification is through that documentation.
Right.
And it's, whether it's copies of plans and submittal information, and things that we can really say, okay, this is the product that we did, and here's the plans, how we got to our design.
Yeah.
So what we were able to do is have Miller Hall act as our lead consultant instead of bringing in another party,
Right.
because they had that in-house.
Okay, so there really is no need for us or requirement for us to go to it is
Correct.
and go to our RFQ or RFQ for somebody else.
Right, because it's within a we selected Miller Hall, we can't add this scope to their
Yeah.
contract.
And they're already recognized being as
Yes,
trustworthy.
yes.
Okay, good.
Okay, any further questions?
No.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion.
I move to authorize the library director to execute a contract addendum with the Miller Hall Partnership in the amount of $154,605 for the Central Library and $116,180 for the Redmond Library to incorporate the added lead certification scope of services into their contract.
Oh, God. I'll second.
Okay.
And-
Okay, and seconding? Any
I'll
further- Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous.
The second one I have here is we're requesting approval for Todd to execute change orders to Kirby Nagelhout Construction. And this is, we want to engage certain specialty subcontractors in a design assist mode. And this is part of the CMGC process where we're reaching out to get the expertise of specialty contractors. And in this case, it's our window consultant, structural steel fabricator, and design build, photovoltaic or, solar energy contractor, and then also electrical and plumbing, electrical and mechanical. The design assist is that these subcontractors we have to go through a competitive RFP process to select them. Kirby Nagel had already developed their RFP, submitted it to us for review. We reviewed it. We had legal counsel review it, DPL's legal counsel. So Carrie looked at it, went through it to make sure, one, it's compliant with the terms of our contract, which it is, and also that it's in compliance with the model rules that the district has adopted, and it is. And as Carrie went through it, she asked that they make a couple, changes to their RFP. It's a publicly bid, so, they submit it out there and anybody can bid on it. And so we want to engage these subs at this point as we're going into the design development, to really look at what they're going to help us do is look at how do we maintain our budget? How do we design a system that is constructible and it's cost effective, and look at those options. And the other one that I didn't mention is the DLT. And so DLT is a wood system, which is used on Redmond and on central library. And it's a prefabricated wood floor system that's got built-in acoustical properties. It's kind of all the new rage in the wood industry because it's a great building product. Used extensively in Europe for quite a few years, and it's really taken off here. We're building a LEAP or CLT building right now over in Eugene. But it's a great product. But the thing is, we want to engage that manufacturer or manufacturers now at this time to get their input into our design. So that way, how we're designing it is really, like I said, efficient, cost-effective wise, and constructability wise. The cost that these dollars that we would be paying are built into Kirby's existing cost estimate. So what we're doing is advancing some of their dollars to them early to pay for this. So it doesn't change our budget at all. It's just allowing them to start spending some of the money in there. I want to say that for Central, it's they gave us a budget. I set it at 600,000 that we would like approval for, and then 150,000 on Redmond. And it's just Central is much bigger, more complex building than Redmond. So I think, on Redmond, we're not looking to engage the structural steel. It's predominantly a wood building there, structural wise. And the structural steel component is simple enough that we don't need additional assistance. As compared to what we're doing with Central, it's much more complex structural steel design, and one that we'll ultimately want to buy early because of the long lead time and get them on board, which will happen later in the summer once we've gotten well into our 50% construction document. So that's the request is to, and these will come in, they've got like 4 or 5 trades, but we won't do them all at once. We're going to do them over the course of about 2 or 3 months. And that's where we'd like to have be in a position that we can bring to Todd a summary of the bid results, what they are, and to allow him, we've already executed the contract, and what we would be adding is what are called initial amendments prior to the full establishment of the GMP to do it in increments. And that's a process, the way the contract form that is set up with the CMGC is, that's the basis of it, is that it allows you that flexibility to add components up front before you have to set the full amount, and allows us to deal with, the accelerated method. So, questions?
Yeah. So the subs have already been chosen by Kirby, right?
No.
So is this to actually contract with certain subs or just to get estimates from subcontractors?
This approval would allow Todd to execute on the change orders when they come in.
Right.
Kirby has to issue the RFP publicly.
Right.
Secure proposals in from who's ever interested in this. Vet those and then submit to us a written recommendation of who to select.
Right.
And what that final cost is. And at that point, and once we go through it as the owner's rep, we'll go through it in detail with Kirby, look at it and say, yes, we agree. Then we would sit down with DPL and go through it to where we would then be asking Todd, here's the appropriate contract document that we need you to sign. And we would then roll the cost into their contract. So we would actually probably wouldn't be giving them 600,000, but we would give them small increments for each. If you saw in the breakdown, there's, I think, like 5 trades,
right?
And we'll probably do them almost one at a time. They may do a couple. Exterior skin and structural steel will be the first 2. They're almost in order in the way they listed them and how we'll go about bringing them on board. The first two there are very important. Solar, because we've really been studying our whole PV system of how because we want to get net zero on both of these projects. And Miller Hall has taken it to a point where they're saying, this is a design build system. We really need to bring those guys on board here in design development, finalize.
So let me try and get this straight in my mind. What this is allowing is have Kirby go out with an RFP to look for, it's gonna cost $164,000 to pay whoever he chooses from the RFP to say what's the cost, or is this to actually go out and confirm a cost from individuals?
Yeah.
He'll ask several different companies and they'll see what they say we should actually cost. And then he'll bring that back and incorporate that into his GMP.
Yeah. These are estimates put together by Kirby Nagelbaum to say, we think it's going to cost this much. What I said is, look, I want to be able to come to you, to the board, and say, I'd like to get approval so that if we get this done, say in 2 weeks, and we want to hire one of these guys, I'd like to be able to go to Todd and say, here's the answers, and he be in a position to execute on it. So these are estimates that Kirby put together that they believe the cost will come within these amounts. And that, but it will be supported by actual bid proposals. So like in that case with glass, 164,000, we may find it comes in at 100,000 or 150 or some number, right? In there, but it would be supported by the RFP process and by the actual proposals received. And then these guys are, we're also looking at, because it's not that they're just helping us with cost, but they're really helping us with constructability of how we want to assemble, because these are systems that are greatly influenced by the subcontractor, how they're going to put them together. And so they're providing, that's that design assist, where they're looking at what the architect's drawing and saying, hey, if you do it like this, I can use a standard component and assemble it and make it more efficient. Or with our window system, it's all about where's the water going? How do we capture and keep the water out of the building? So they look very much at how does that system work together on the window system. Structural steel is all about what size, what member, how are we connecting it. We have some really intricate structural steel components and how we go about fabricating them, because they're really large. The steel fabricator will help us say, look, you can design it on this type of shape of steel piece member or this length. That becomes very efficient in our manufacturing process or in our shipping process and assembly at the site. So those are the design assist roles that they really are going to take. The CLT, DLT is the same with our wood components. They look at that. Concurrent with that, they're looking at, and hey, what do we think the cost of the whole system is? And are we maintaining that cost budget? At some point, we will then go out for a final pricing of what's the final cost of the work. But this lets us utilize these sub-trade partners to help us on these elements. But what this request is to allow Todd to sign these little pieces as we bring them in. It helps speed our process to not have to come back to you as a board every month with a small piece, but to let us move forward with this, knowing that we wouldn't exceed this 600,000.
Let me explain. The 164,000 for exterior skin on Central is so that Kirby can go out and get subs, give him pricing, what they think would actually cost, not for the whole project.
Right. Just for the design assist.
Just for the design assist on this project.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's part of the getting to the GMP.
Yes, sir.
So he has a firmer figure.
Yeah.
But in no way says he was going to actually use them.
Correct.
Because that has to go over RFP all
That,
over
that
again.
has to go out again. This is paying for their services to help
Their
us in
expertise is
advance.
saying, are
Yes,
you in the right price range?
Yeah.
Is your design right? Is it buildable, as we say?
exactly.
Yeah.
All the reasons we went with this process to begin with
Exactly.
is to get those questions answered
Yeah.
early before we had some design that was gonna be really expensive.
Exactly.
to build.
Yeah.
And what they've asked, what Kirby has asked, and to be able to bring these guys on, Word is a process that I would say is normal in this,
Mhm.
utilizing the CMGC method. It's something I'm used to. And so,
Yeah. What's throwing me is when you say bring them on board.
yes,
To me, that means they're gonna do the work. This is no, we're asking for your expertise.
yes,
They're almost being consultants
That's
in,
exactly it. They're
Exactly.
who's consulting
that is
them.
their role.
right.
And so it doesn't lock us into them on the long-term construction. It just,
Right.
we get to pick their brain.
But we're paying them for it.
And we, exactly.
We're paying them. Yeah.
Exactly. And so at the end, it, we pay them. If we don't use them, we pay for their services. We didn't
Just
ask for anything gratis. It's a real clean way, especially if later on we choose not to proceed with them.
Yeah, well, it makes it so it's much better. We're not counting just on Kirby's expertise.
No.
Okay, any further questions or comments?
No.
I would entertain a motion.
Cynthia, you're on a roll. Do you want to bring somebody else?
Go ahead.
All right, I'll make the motion. And I move to authorize signing authority to the library director up to $600,000 for the central library and $150,000 for the Redmond library for the subcontractor design assist awards described in the DPL bond program, central and Redmond design assist memo.
I'll say.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, we have library news. Todd?
First of all, did you hand out this to you?
Oh, my bad.
Oh, no, it's fine. Pass this down, take one and pass it along. Every year, Special Districts Association gives us a discount on our insurance based on different factors, and they change them every year. So I just wanted to share with you some of these. Sorry, I need to steal yours.
Oh,
I got
sorry.
this first.
Say.
The first one we didn't put on here is actually one that we've already accomplished. The second one is coming up. Sometimes they do that. They say, you have to follow this thing, and we don't have information on it yet. So, but the ones I wanted to highlight were special districts training. They are actually, we can get 2% off if we engage in a board practices assessment, which some of you may remember we did that a couple of years ago. We were working with them to do it virtually, but basically they just come in and ask some questions about how your board's doing and assess you. We passed that with flying colors last time. The other one I want to highlight is this board education, number 5, member education program. If we get at least 2 members to sign up for this program, then we get an additional 2%. So that is one that I want to highlight for you. We have until November to accomplish these things. But that's one I want to highlight, especially to see if we have at least 2 people that are interested in taking this program. And
Do you want indications now or?
if you, I just want to let you, it's just letting you know, if you take a look, read it, think about it, and just let me know.
Okay.
If you do decide to do it, we will announce that at a board meeting because of our insurance program where if we announce it at a board meeting, you're covered. So
And these are all virtual, correct?
It says, the training one says online.
Yeah,
Online or in-person class?
yeah, it varies, so I'm not
Okay.
sure.
Okay,
But number 5 is just in person.
I'm not,
If it's the case, you don't want me there.
okay.
no, I think, well, I would be surprised
Well-
if that one was only,
Take a look, see if you have any questions. We can investigate further too,
okay,
because a lot of times they give us very little information on it, so.
I think I've done the educational before.
Man.
I think I did it with the library, not with the fire district.
I don't know what the time, if you have questions on it too, let us know, because we can ask them. Like,
Yeah.
how long do you have to have done it?
okay. So, yeah, send Todd your questions and your interest.
Other update, our early learning spaces are opening back up. So that's an exciting step for us. We're starting to do live programming. So that's another exciting step as we are hopefully coming out of the pandemic. You will see on our April meeting, which will be in Redmond. We're meeting in Redmond next month. The city of Bend is going to be presenting, they are looking at proposals to ways of doing affordable housing in which they would have special districts waive their taxes. So we're asking them to come and to present on that. I don't have a lot of information on that because they've just proposed it. I'm working with the Parks and Rec and a couple other special districts, including the school district, to find out more information on this. We have a meeting with them this week. But they'll just heads up that they're coming. Based on our discussion at the work session, the desire to have the work sessions on the day of a board meeting, we are currently looking at June 8th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. for a work session, and that we'll take an hour break and then go into board meeting. June 8th, we'll be meeting in Sisters. Then the next session would be September 14th, and the one after that, December 14th. So that would be our schedule for the work sessions for the year. I'll send out those dates. And
So you said June 8th in Sisters?
yes. And then the last thing I wanted to say, Greg just kind of referred to it, but I just want to highlight for board members, we have a lot of times we have to make some difficult decisions. And last year it was about a year ago about selling our bonds. And I was just curious. I went to our bond agent at Piper Sandler and asked what would happen if we waited and sold it now. And he just did some rough calculations and saw that it basically would have cost us an extra $20 to $40 million in interest if we had waited. So I just wanted to highlight for board members, these are kind of high pressure decisions. I want you to know that this is one that came out well for us. And we've already seen Greg say that's something that's really helping us with these cost inflations because a lot's changed in the last year. So thank you.
That really shows we got very wise consultation.
Yeah, I would say with all things financial, and you guys are probably aware of this with your own investments, is wise and luck. Because nobody could predict that what happened over the last year and the inflation that happened. So, yes.
I felt the gentleman who was walking us through that gave us good information.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
So that means that we kind of have 20 to 40 million more to spend.
Yes, that's over the last. the life of the bond, so a lot of that is $20 to $40 million in interest that we're not going to be paying for the next 20 years, so. But that's huge, that's $20 to $40 million that our taxpayers are not gonna be paying.
Good.
Not gonna want, right?
Yeah, and that is it for library news.
Okay. Well, foundation news. We wrapped up our author series for the year with Neil Gaiman on Sunday, and it was a really fascinating presentation. It was our biggest attended presentation for this year. I mean, he's got an international following, and it was really fascinating. It's kind of like, I think we've brought in some people over the years where you just get exposed to someone who is just blindingly brilliant. I mean, and to me, he fit into that category, just somebody whose thinking is just incredible. So for the opportunity for people in Deschutes County to get to hear someone of that caliber, get to ask him questions, and then share that experience with people all over the United States is pretty neat. So yeah, it was a successful year, and we're looking towards the future and trying to figure out what the future of that program looks like. So,
How many people were there?
huh?
How many people attended?
I think they said over 400.
It's a little over 400.
Yeah, so,
He was very thought provoking.
yeah, and so I think, this year we did experience some Zoom fatigue, but we still had good attendance numbers. They're not the attendance numbers that we were getting when we were in person, but that's kind of the way of the world right now. It was still a tremendous opportunity for the people of our county. That's all.
I will add, sorry, for my library news, we did change the agenda for my evaluation. HR Answers has a report done, but they're not available to present it to you until the April meeting. So they will be on our April agenda to go over that.
Right, I'm sorry, we skipped over that.
No, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we're now moving into executive session. The Deschutes Public Library District Board will hold an executive session to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to carry on labor negotiations as provided for in ORS 1926601D. So I'll adjourn the regular meeting and we have an executive session.
Okay, and I will be putting in the waiting room anybody that's.
So we have to turn off everything.
No, everything stays the same. I just
Okay, good.
have to move people in the waiting room. Sorry, it's gonna take a minute.
Thank you, Greg.
Absolutely. It's a good time for me.
I feel like we have this time together every month.
Well, it's always much fun. Next month, we don't have to wear these. Hopefully, yeah. Starting
Thanks
Saturday.
for it, Spray. I really appreciate them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a lot of complex information, but you present executive session and call us back into regular session, resuming the public meeting, and we have our compensation and benefits report to consider for monitoring, and that's this discussion. It made more sense to do it after than before, so.
Yes, the most significant one is we just got, since I wrote this, we got back that compensation piece that I discussed in step 4.
Yeah.
Yes. Other than that, I'm assuming you had a chance to read this. Are there any questions around this? My conclusion is we are in compliance with the compensation and benefits policy.
Any questions?
Different from last year.
If no questions or discussions, I'd entertain a motion.
Also moved.
Okay, do I hear a second? Second. Oh, any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. It passes unanimously. Okay, I'm now going to call us back into executive session, adjourning the public meeting. The Deschutes Public Library District will conduct an executive session to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions as pursuant to ORS 192-6602E. Okay, I am adjourning the executive session and I'm calling us back into public session. And we have, the only thing remaining is self-review of the meeting. So Bunny, since you are our phone-in person, how did this work for you? What'd you think?
You know what? My apologies. I don't know how I spaced on this, but I was absolutely positive this was a Zoom meeting and was wrong. But actually, this works out for people who may be on vacation and want to Zoom in or something like that. The little I in the middle does a great job. It zooms right around to who's talking and I could see it. I could see the charts quite well. I miss being there with you guys in person, but I felt like I got everything I needed to get out of the meeting. It went well. And next time I will try very hard not to mess up.
Buddy, next time it's live and it's at the Redmond Library.
That's right. I know. I put it on right big letters here.
Okay, Anne, do you want to go?
Good meeting. We covered a lot of territory today. As I said before, the negotiations was, I've been on the other end, you know, as a teacher, but this is my first time being, you know, on that end. So that was very helpful. So I am looking forward to seeing how that path takes us. So.
Right?
Yeah, very good. Long, but
Yeah.
it was okay. We had chocolates.
Did you leave me any or did the?
Oh, you got plenty of.
Cynthia?
Well, we covered a lot of material today. It was a long meeting. I'm glad that Benny got to be the guinea pig and this works.
Wait,
so-
I chaired the meeting on Zoom.
Yeah,
if you
so if
remember.
I get to do this at some point, that's nice to know it works. I agree with Anne. It was fascinating being on the other end of the negotiations, having taught for so many years. And I feel really good about the direction that we want to go because we care about these people. We want to retain these people. And I personally, every time I sign checks, we're sending somebody away and it's because way too often they can't afford to live here. So I want to retain those people. I don't want to lose them, but at the same time, it has to be fiscally responsible. So anyway, it was a very educational meeting for me.
Yeah, I thought it was a good meeting. I think we got a lot done and I think we've got a lot accomplished in good reports and
I'm just gonna add, I will send you the full, I just thought about this appraisal. Because it has some of it is just, but it has comparisons with other buildings around, and so that would be helpful for your
I'd like to see
thoughts.
that.
I just didn't want to print out 70 pages for each of you, so.
Do they do appraisal structural?
Thank you for
integrity
not
of buildings?
killing a bunch of trees.
I don't
They just said
remember,
it's good.
they poked around, but I'll have to go back.
I
and
think
look.
it said that, yeah, they
Yeah.
gave like an estimated life left in the building.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we need to be careful about what we're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And thank you. We packed a lot into that meeting, and unfortunately, it's going to be like that for a while, and we even dropped out one of our executive sessions. So, but thank you for your stamina.
Yeah, really, I think this is our longest ever. So
Okay.
with that, meeting adjourned.
Bye, Bunny.
Bye.
Bye, Bunny.
Bye-bye. Thanks for your patience.
Oh, thank you. It's hard to Zoom.